I'm not returning home. I found someone who truly appreciates me and already moved your belongings into storage. My name is Thomas Mercer, 52 years old and staring at my phone in the dining room of our Seattle townhouse at 12:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. My wife, Elaine, was supposedly on day 3 of a conference in San Diego. The message arrived with a screenshot of a bank transfer, $127,000 relocated from our shared savings to her personal account. I set my phone down and sipped my tea. 17 years of marriage concluded in 2 sentences and a financial transaction. There had been warning signs for months. Business trips that mysteriously extended. Expensive clothing that never appeared when we were together. Hushed conversations that terminated when I entered the room. I noticed everything. I'm a forensic financial investigator. Detecting inconsistencies is literally my profession. Yet I remained silent. Perhaps that was my initial error. Or maybe my first mistake was marrying someone who dismissed my career as just boring spreadsheets and audits. I opened my laptop and checked one of my email accounts, one Elaine wasn't aware existed. 3 alerts from my banking security system. Someone had attempted to modify passwords on accounts Elaine had no knowledge of. She was being methodical. I had to admire her thoroughness. I picked up my phone and typed 2 words in response. Noted. Goodbye. Then I called my sister Rebecca. Remember the contingency protocol we discussed 3 years ago? I said when she answered. It's time to implement it. Are you certain? She asked. Absolutely, I replied. She's made her move. I disconnected and glanced at the wedding photograph on the bookshelf. It was the only image in the townhouse that still featured both of us. I should have noticed that detail, too. I met Elaine Winters at a charity fundraiser for the University of Washington. I was 35, recently divorced from a brief first marriage, and entirely focused on building my financial investigation firm. Elaine was 32, charismatic, driven, and completely disinterested in understanding my profession. I don't need to know the specifics, she'd say whenever I attempted to explain a case. As long as we maintain our lifestyle. We married after 14 months of dating. I financed her Pilates studio, funding the entire enterprise from my personal savings. When she wanted a larger home in a trendier neighborhood, I agreed. When she desired luxury vacations and high-end automobiles, I nodded and transferred the funds. My mother had cautioned me once while we were preparing Sunday dinner, and she paused, wooden spoon in hand. Thomas, I notice Elaine spends quite liberally with your earnings, she said carefully. Just ensure she values the work you do to generate that income. I dismissed her concern, but the observation remained with me. 7 years into our marriage, I began quietly restructuring my financial holdings. Nothing unethical, just protective. I established several limited liability companies, created trusts, invested in digital currencies, and maintained international accounts for overseas clients. Elaine knew about our joint checking and savings, nothing more. I observed as she became increasingly entrenched in wellness influencer circles. Her social media following expanded into the tens of thousands. She began taking trips with her holistic community, first weekends, then full weeks. You'd be bored, she'd say. It's all meditation workshops and nutrition seminars. Last Thanksgiving, she forgot our anniversary. When I mentioned it the following day, she purchased an expensive watch and said, I've just been overwhelmed with the studio expansion. I accepted the timepiece, but that evening I finalized the documentation for my contingency strategy. The indicators were all present. I simply refused to acknowledge the complete picture. The morning after her text, I woke early and brewed coffee. Same routine as always. Habits persist even when your world disintegrates. I logged into my primary financial management system, custom designed for my practice but adapted for personal use. With several keystrokes, I activated the contingency protocol Rebecca and I had engineered years earlier. First, I froze all joint accounts and credit cards. Then I flagged the $127,000 transfer as fraudulent, leveraging my banking contacts to expedite the investigation. I sent evidence documenting financial misconduct to my attorney, with instructions to file for divorce immediately. Then I called my mother. Elaine's left me, I said simply. She took money and relocated my belongings while allegedly attending a conference. My mother remained silent momentarily. I'm sorry, Thomas, she finally said, but I can't claim to be surprised. What do you intend to do now? What I've been preparing to do for years, I replied. Protect what's rightfully mine. An hour later, my phone illuminated with Elaine's name. I declined the call. 10 more calls followed. Then a message. What the hell have you done? The transfer disappeared and my cards are declined everywhere. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the storage facility listed in her text using the access code she'd provided. I retrieved 2 boxes containing my clothes and my backup laptop. The remainder of my possessions, family photographs, books, keepsakes from my father, were nowhere to be found. That's when something crystallized within me. This wasn't merely about finances anymore. It was about 17 years discarded thoughtlessly. It was about someone believing they could erase my existence from my own life. I stopped at a cafe and opened my laptop. Using financial databases exclusively available to licensed investigators, I compiled everything discoverable about Connor Reynolds, the fitness entrepreneur Elaine had been featuring in photos for months. "Does someone who truly appreciates me," she'd referenced. What I uncovered confirmed my suspicions. Connor's wellness empire was leveraged to the brink of collapse. 3 maxed-out business credit lines, a commercial lease he couldn't afford, and Elaine had already co-signed on an equipment loan with him 7 weeks earlier. I closed my laptop and drove to a hotel. For the first time in years, I felt absolute clarity regarding necessary actions. The anger had dissipated. In its place was focus. Monday morning, I entered my office as though nothing had changed. My assistant, Margaret, looked up, surprised. "Thomas, I assumed you'd take personal time. Elaine called here 4 times already." "Did she?" I said. Not a question. She sounded distressed. "Mentioned some confusion with your accounts and needed urgent contact." I nodded. "If she calls again, direct her to my attorney." By noon, Elaine had escalated from calls to physical appearance. The receptionist buzzed my office. "Your wife is here." "She's quite persistent." I sighed and walked to the lobby. Elaine stood there, designer sunglasses perched atop her head, Pilates attire perfectly coordinated. She smiled upon seeing me, the same smile she'd employed for 17 years when wanting something. "Thomas, there's been a massive misunderstanding with the bank," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "All our accounts are frozen." "Not a misunderstanding," I said quietly. "You transferred funds without authorization. The bank flagged it as potential fraud." Her smile faltered. "It was our joint account. I'm your wife. You're my soon-to-be ex-wife who emptied our savings while informing me you'd moved out and found someone new. That's textbook financial misconduct." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You cannot do this to me. I've already placed deposits on a new condo. I've made commitments to Connor." "Yes, I'm aware of those commitments." Her face paled. "You're investigating me?" "No, just protecting myself from fraud." "I'll fight this," she snapped. "I deserve half of everything." I looked at her evenly. "Half of what's in those accounts?" "Certainly. But you seem to believe that's the entirety of our assets." She blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "You'll discover during disclosure," I said, then turned and returned to my office. That afternoon, I received an email from Elaine's hastily retained attorney demanding immediate access to all financial records and threatening to expose irregularities in my accounting practice if I failed to comply. An amateur tactic, a threat with no substance behind it. I forwarded it to my attorney with one line: "Proceed as outlined." By evening, Elaine had mobilized mutual friends to her defense. My phone filled with messages questioning why I was being vindictive and controlling. No one had inquired about her whereabouts the previous week or her companion. No one asked about the money she'd taken. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I visited the gym, not Elaine's studio or Connor's flashy fitness center, but the modest community facility I'd frequented for years. I lifted weights until my muscles burned, then returned to my hotel room. The trap was closing, but not around me. 3 days later, my attorney called. "We've uncovered something significant," she said. "Elaine's been diverting money from your joint account for over 14 months. Small transfers initially, then larger ones." "To where?" I asked, though I already knew. "Multiple accounts. Some to her personal savings, but primarily to a business LLC registered to Connor Reynolds. Almost $93,000 total, using your joint funds as the source." "Yes, which means we can add financial infidelity to the divorce petition." I thanked her and ended the call. I wasn't surprised, but confirmation still felt like a blade between the ribs. Elaine hadn't simply left me for another man. She'd been orchestrating it for over a year, financing her departure and her new partner's business with my money. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. You need to back off. Elaine deserves better than you. Don't make this uglier than necessary. Connor Reynolds involving himself directly. Interesting. I drove to my sister's house the next morning. Rebecca worked in cybersecurity, the perfect complement to my financial expertise. We collaborated on cases previously, but this was different. I need everything available on Reynolds Wellness LLC, I told her. Bank records, loans, credit applications, everything. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Legal channels only, right? Of course. We're simply connecting public information more efficiently than most could. 3 hours later, we had our answer. Connor Reynolds wasn't just in debt. He was drowning. His social media portrayed prosperity, but his business was failing. The new equipment, the location expansion, the promotional events, all financed through high-risk loans and, more recently, Elaine's investments. But there was something else. Something Elaine couldn't have known. Look at this, Rebecca said, indicating her screen. Reynolds applied for a small business loan 3 months ago. Used the studio equipment as collateral. That's standard, I said. Yes, but look who co-signed. I leaned forward. The documentation displayed Elaine's signature on a $190,000 equipment loan she'd co-signed before leaving me. But here's the critical part, Rebecca said quietly. The loan specifies joint responsibility with her spouse. They leveraged your marital status to secure preferential terms. I stared at the screen. She obligated my assets for his loan without my knowledge. Exactly. And there's more. 3 credit cards, a vehicle lease, and the new studio space rental all co-signed by Elaine. All leveraging your marital assets as security. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, a mail carrier was delivering packages, oblivious to the complexities unfolding inside. She has no comprehension of what she's done, I said finally. And neither does he. The next morning, I met with my attorney and presented everything we'd discovered. I want to move expeditiously, I told her, before they realized the implications. She reviewed the documents and nodded. We'll file for emergency asset protection today. The loan fraud alone justifies freezing everything until the divorce concludes. That afternoon, I drove to Reynolds Wellness. The studio was sleek and minimalist, with inspirational phrases stenciled on the walls and Connor's image plastered across the entrance. Inside, young professionals and premium athleisure took selfies between half-hearted exercises. Connor noticed me immediately. He was taller in person, with the artificial tan and perfect smile of someone whose career depended on appearance. He approached and extended his hand, expression carefully calibrated. You must be Thomas, he said. Elaine mentioned you. I'm certain she has, I replied, ignoring his hand. We need to speak privately. His smile wavered, but he led me to his office, glass-walled, visible to everyone but soundproof. How can I assist you? He asked, closing the door. I placed a folder on his desk. This contains every financial document connecting you to Elaine. Loans, credit cards, leases. All co-signed using our marital assets as security. He lifted the folder cautiously. I don't understand. It's straightforward. Elaine utilized our marriage to guarantee your business loans. Now we're divorcing and those guarantees are invalid. The color drained from his face as he examined the pages. These are legitimate business arrangements between Elaine and myself. Perhaps, but the financial institutions approved them based on our combined assets and income, assets she no longer has access to. He closed the folder. What do you want? Nothing from you. I simply thought you should understand what's approaching. The banks will be calling those loans due very soon. Elaine said you were wealthy, he said, voice hardening. That money wasn't a concern for you. Money was never the issue, I replied. Trust was. I stood to leave but paused at the door. One additional matter. When Elaine moved out, she took items of sentimental value to me. Family photographs, my father's watch, things money cannot replace. He stared at me for an extended moment. I'll see what I can do. I nodded and departed. The next day, a courier delivered a package to my hotel. Inside were the missing photographs, my father's watch, and other personal items. No note included. That same afternoon, my attorney confirmed the emergency asset protection had been granted. All shared assets would remain frozen until the divorce finalized. I logged into my financial management system and reviewed the alerts. Elaine had attempted to access our frozen accounts 23 times in the past 24 hours. She'd also tried to open a new credit line using our home as collateral. Denied. My phone illuminated with her name again. This time I answered. "What have you done?" she demanded, voice trembling. "The bank called in Connor's loans. All of them. They're repossessing the equipment tomorrow." "That's unfortunate," I said calmly. "This is vindictive, Thomas. You're destroying him to punish me." "I'm not doing anything to him. I'm simply protecting myself from fraud. You utilized our marriage to secure his loans without my knowledge or consent. That's illegal. We can resolve this," she said, voice suddenly softening. "Come home. We'll talk." 17 years of marriage. And she still believed I could be manipulated so easily. "There's nothing to resolve," I replied. "The divorce will proceed. The fraud investigation will continue. And Connor will learn an expensive lesson about due diligence." I ended the call and blocked her number. That night, I slept better than I had in months. 3 weeks later, I sat in a conference room as Elaine and her attorney arrived for our court-mandated mediation. She appeared exhausted, the designer outfit and flawless makeup unable to conceal the strain. Her attorney spoke first. "My client is prepared to be reasonable regarding the division of assets, despite the aggressive tactics employed thus far." My attorney smiled politely. "That's encouraging, because there's been a development." She slid a document across the table. "The bank has completed its fraud investigation. They've determined that Elaine forged Thomas's signature on multiple loan documents, using their marital assets as collateral without his knowledge." Elaine's attorney skimmed the document, face paling. "We'll need time to review this." "Of course," my attorney said. "But you should know that the bank has already referred the matter to the district attorney. This meeting is a courtesy before criminal charges are filed." Elaine stared at me, eyes wide. "Criminal charges? Thomas, you can't be serious." I met her gaze steadily. "I didn't file the charges. The bank did. That's what happens when you commit loan fraud." Her attorney whispered something in her ear. She shook her head vehemently. "If Ms. Winters is willing to sign our proposed settlement agreement today," my attorney continued, "Thomas is prepared to provide a statement to the bank that could mitigate the criminal implications. He won't press charges for the theft of personal property or the unauthorized transfer from the joint account." I watched as Elaine's carefully constructed world collapsed. She'd expected anger, jealousy, perhaps even pleading. She hadn't anticipated consequences. "The settlement is equitable," I said quietly. "You retain your Pilates studio, which is consistently profitable. You keep your vehicle and personal possessions. You receive no alimony, and you assume responsibility for the debts you incurred in my name." "And Connor?" she asked, voice barely audible. "Mr. Reynolds's financial difficulties are his own concern," my attorney replied. "But without your husband's assets backing those loans, I understand the bank has already initiated repossession proceedings." Elaine signed the papers without further discussion. As we exited the conference room, she caught my arm. "I never imagined you'd respond like this," she said. "You always just accommodated everything." "That was my choice," I replied. "Just as this was yours." I walked away without looking back. A month later, I moved out of the hotel and into a modest craftsman house near downtown Tacoma. Nothing extravagant, just a solid structure that needed renovation, the kind of project that would occupy my hands and mind during evenings. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Elaine had relocated to Arizona to reinvent herself. Her Instagram displayed desert landscapes and inspirational quotes about fresh starts. Connor's Wellness Center had been acquired by a national franchise, and he'd moved to Austin to expand his brand. Neither mentioned what had transpired. People rarely publicize their failures. My sister Rebecca visited one Saturday to help install new flooring in the living room. "Heard anything from Elaine?" she asked as we measured the space. "No," I said, "and I don't anticipate I will. You know, you could have taken everything from her. The fraud charges alone would have guaranteed that." I shrugged. "What purpose would that serve? She's no longer my concern." We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of measuring, cutting, and laying creating a meditative atmosphere. "I'm considering taking some time off," I said eventually. "Maybe drive up to Olympic National Park, do some hiking at the spots Dad showed us." "He'd appreciate that," Rebecca replied. "You haven't been there since he passed." That evening, after Rebecca left, I sat on my back deck with a glass of whiskey. The neighborhood was peaceful, with only occasional laughter or conversation drifting through the twilight, different from the exclusive community Elaine had insisted upon. More authentic, somehow. I reflected on the past 17 years, how I'd permitted someone else to define my existence, my value. How I'd recognized the warning signs but chosen to disregard them. How when the moment arrived, I'd been prepared. Because some part of me had always known this day would come. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt liberated. The next morning, I called my office and informed them I'd be taking 3 weeks off. Then I packed my SUV, secured the house, and headed west toward the mountains. No itinerary, no expectations. Just the open road. And for the first time in years, no invisible ledger of grievances to balance.